I'm calling this the client corner. And what is all of this? Well, what this is a meeting is about is I thought, this is a great way to just kind of introduce some of the things that I've got going on in my life and trying to do with the business to a bunch of people. I'm going to record this. That way, as I have new clients join, or returning clients for that matter, I can point them in this direction and they can kind of get a sense of some trends and some things that have been happening over the last year. And this is an easy way to update everybody at the same time rather than doing it in our consultation sessions. So we're going to talk about some trends that I'm noticing, some statistics based on last year. We're going to look at company updates and personal updates as well, starting with where's the data set from? So this is last year, my company worked in 21 different states plus the District of Columbia. So the information that I'm sharing is from 60 galas. I did not include any of my consulting clients. These are only galas that either I or my team worked. Sometimes, I don't know what happens on site if I'm a consultant. Could be a board member that's leading that auction, could be another auctioneer, I don't know, but I've got a better control over it if it's one of my actual clients. So representing, these are 21 different schools, 39 different nonprofits. In the school category, average guest count was 246 people, and these events grossed anywhere from $70,000 to $885,000. On the nonprofit side, 5 of which were associations. In a couple of slides here, I break out some of that information. So for those of you that are part of associations, you'll get that attention. But the average guest count for my nonprofit galas, 264 guests in the room, and they grossed anywhere from $30,000 to $1.2 million. I will say that personally, I'm one of these auctioneers that prefers smaller rooms to bigger rooms. So I kind of like 250 and fewer. I know some auctioneers that just love it, like 1,000 people and get them all in the room and it's really lively. But just for my style of auctioneering, I kind of like it when it's a little bit more on the smaller side. So I don't mind those numbers at all when it comes to that, 246 and 264, which is kind of interesting now that I'm looking at it. It's the reverse, kind of inverse numbers there. The number one trend that I was seeing, well, not number one trend, the first trend that we're talking about, higher ticket prices. Why are people paying more, charging more for their tickets? Inflation, expenses have increased since post-COVID. I don't need to tell you all of that. In the school range, what I was seeing is anywhere from a $0 ticket price, this is the whole range, to a $275 per person ticket price. The median ticket price from 2023 was $150. So you can think about, if you're a school, you can think about what you're charging in relation to what I just presented there. Maybe you might want to think about going up or down, but that's where I saw it. The median, most people were charging $150 per ticket or per person. Nonprofits ranged anywhere from $85 for a ticket to $1,000 a ticket, with the median being most people charging about $250 per person. Now, for those associations, those 5 associations I worked with, 3 didn't charge anything. One of them charged $85 and one charged $250. Associations, if you're an association watching this, you probably already know, but for those of you that are like, why are some of them zero? The reality is that a lot of these associations are having part of the gala is really part of their 3-day conference. And so sometimes they charge separately for that. Sometimes it's just part of their registration cost for the conference. So that's why you tend to see a little bit more on the $0 side for all of that. But that gives you a sense there. Higher ticket prices. So what's the deal with these ticket prices? What can be done if we're trying to cover our expenses, but we don't want to scare off our guests? So what I have done here is provided some creative approaches for how you can manipulate your ticket pricing and still not scare off people. And although I'm going to go through these quickly, for any of you that want to go through this in more detail in our consultations, certainly we can do that, okay? But one of the ways that you can do that is an early bird ticket price. So in the past, if you charged $100 and now you're increasing it to $150 per person, an easy way to soften the blow is to have an early bird ticket price that is still $100 and then increase the regular standard ticket price to $150. That would be a simple way. If they want to come for $100, they still can. They just need to make sure that they are booking early. Second way to do it is to create a VIP ticket. So a VIP ticket, the example would be that you have your standard ticket price that you've always had, $150, but you are now offering a VIP ticket. And the VIP ticket is whereby you are including benefits that are free or nearly free to you, but are so substantial that guests would want to pay more to get those benefits. Now, I oftentimes see this in relation to where people think that, geez, should we increase our ticket price? Is it time to do this? Is this the right time? If you do charge a VIP ticket and you've got a whole bunch of people that participate in paying that extra amount, well, then by all means, you should be having a higher standard ticket price, because if everybody's jumping up to that, you're like, hey, there's not a lot of price sensitivity here. We could do something like that. So again, there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. Oftentimes when I see some benefits, it's some sort of activity that's taking place during the reception. It might be gifts. It might be they get their own raffle. It might be they get valet parking. There's a bunch of things that we can go through in a consultation for that, but a VIP ticket is one way to do it. If you do go this route, I would not encourage you to just increase it by like $25. You want to have a pretty substantial advancement on that, like $100, I would say. Perhaps the biggest VIP ticket I saw was many years ago now. I was working with St. Peter's in DC. In fact, kind of an interesting story. The gal who instituted this, she was one of the gala co-chairs that year. She was attending the Gonzaga Gala in December, and she came up to me and we were talking, and she said, I was the one that first moved us over to the Nat Stadium. And I'm like, I totally remember that, because they had a $650 increase in their ticket if you wanted to be part of the VIP. $650. But for that, they got to go to see the where the uniform room was for the Nats. It's our professional baseball team here in Washington, D.C. And they got to do the batting cage. So it was like a real nice upgrade for the VIP. So that's just kind of a side story. Number 3, a reception ticket versus a dinner ticket. So this could be something whereby, I know one of my schools, you can pay to just go to the silent auction and the reception. But then if you want to go and have an actual dinner and participate in the live auction and the dinner, it's a separate price. Number 4, a standing ticket versus a seated ticket. So you can either stand and pay a cheaper price, or you can actually get a place to put your purse, your coat, your stuff, and sit down during the program, different price, or even adding a post party. I really haven't seen a lot of this, but I did for the first time have one of my schools do this last year, a $75 ticket for a different way, different party. The party continued in a different room. I have seen nonprofits do this as well. And in fact, I did a video on my blog not too long ago that kind of talked about post parties. So those are some ways that you might be thinking about manipulating your ticket structure as it ties into this trend. Number 2, changing the free or the discounted ticket policy. Now, very common, it's not uncommon, I should say, especially in schools, to have the teachers coming, and staff will say coming for a discounted ticket or a underwritten ticket or a free ticket, whatever the case might be. Even with our nonprofits, in some cases, they are offering a free or discounted ticket or an underwritten ticket to people who may be like, okay, foster parents, right? The foster parents might get to come for a discounted or a free ticket. The social workers might be coming for a free or a discounted tickets. So what I'm starting to see there is some manipulation with those as well, responding to the increase in costs. So what we might see is that, yeah, they're still offering, maybe it's not a free ticket, but it's a discounted ticket now. Or maybe the guests don't get to come for free. Maybe there's a certain limit as to how many of these discounted or free tickets that they are offering. So this is some of the ways that I'm seeing this change within the structure of tickets. Trend number 3, reducing the number of live auction items. I think that this is tied into the fact that we're just still seeing a lot of people who have short attention spans. And so I hear more about like, we want to keep the program short. And hey, I'll be the first to say, I am not the fastest auctioneer. I'm not the fastest auctioneer. So because of that, this affects you folks, my clients, more than maybe some others. But what we're seeing is that the numbers offered of the items is coming down. So within my schools, last year, those 21 schools that I worked with, the range of items offered was anywhere from 3 items to 19 items being offered. And then when it came down to actually what was sold, it was anywhere from 6 to 28. You're like, how does this matter? You sold 3 items. How can you suddenly now have 6 as far as what was sold? Oftentimes we've got some secret seconds going on, some doubled items or tripled items, whatever the case might be. So What we presented to the audience were those 3 items or those 10 items, but what we actually sold was more because we were able to sell multiples. So the median within my school clients, 10 items with 12 being sold. Most of my schools are selling about 10 items with 12 being sold. The average, which, can change a little bit from your actual median, 9.9 items offered, 12.3 items being sold. In the nonprofit and associations, I lumped them together in this case. The range was anywhere from 3 to 13 items being offered, with 3 to 21 being sold. Median, 8 items offered, just a few more than that, 8.5 being sold. Clearly, we don't have as many items that we can oftentimes double within associations. Usually, if we are, it's tied into consignment. And then the average within my nonprofit and association space was 7 items, 8.7 being sold. I'm going to stop the sharing here just for a second to make sure that I don't have anybody that's waiting to come in. I just want to make sure that the technology seems to be working. All right, looks good enough. Let's go back to this. Okay, trend number 3. So reducing the number of live auction items, again, primarily because people want to get to dancing, they want to get to other activities, and so that's where we're headed. Now, with the next trend, industry seems to be pushing consignment, though I'm not necessarily saying that this is for the right reasons. Now, I'll tell you something else. I think I'm going to do a video on 2024 trends, and I'm going to put that on YouTube. I am not even going to mention this trend because I don't want a bunch of auctioneers and consigners coming after me. So I'll tell you, but I'm not going to actually put this on a wider screen. Of the schools that I worked with last year, 10% of them used consignment in their auction. Within the nonprofit and association group, 72% used consignment. What I have observed, and I can tell you just from the phone calls I get, you probably see it as well. It used to be that software companies have really dominated on the marketing front. Not too surprising, right? They've got a whole marketing team that are producing podcasts, doing video content, putting out social media. I think that's their job, right? I used to do that at GE. So they've really been pushing it. Well, we're seeing now the same true of the consigners. So it's not uncommon to see the consigners putting out their podcasts, putting out their information, partnering up with different company, NX Unite, for instance. They've had me on a couple of their panels, but now at this point, they're like, well, if you want to come back to our panel, you got to pay for it. Well, guess what? I'm seeing consigners pay to have a slot on their panel for free content that's then distributed and marketed to folks such as yourself. The other thing I'm observing is that we're seeing a lot of auctioneers white labeling. Now, if you've gone into the digital lounge and if you've watched my marketing auction, what do I call it? Mastering Auction Consignment course, the Mastering Auction Consignment course, I talk about white labeling. White labeling is when, like you might go to an auctioneer site and they'll have a tab on their website that says, here's some great trips to use. Well, when you click into that tab, there are consigners that will feed a link to me, like if I wanted to put this on my website. So it almost looks like the trips are something that I'm offering or have taken or have promoted and sold in the past. But what it's more or less doing is it's pulling in the content from a particular consignor. So it's a way for, I guess, for the auctioneer to look like they're offering more services, right? But they've aligned with a consignor in order to generate some extra revenue through that link. The other thing that I'm seeing happen is that I know of 2 auctioneers now creating completely separate sites. You wouldn't even know that they're affiliated with the auctioneer, but it looks like a consignment site. And sometimes they'll say the words like they've vetted these trips, but more or less they're just creating pass-through revenue for themselves. And you're able to go to those sites and buy. And when it comes through, then they're passing that on to Mitch Stewart or passing that on to Winspire, whatever the case might be. But it's, they're pulling from different consigners and then creating this separate website. I was, just to give you a sense of how the industry's flowing, in November, I was contacted by an auctioneer out of the Chicago area, And he's created one of these white labeling sites. And he says, hey, Sherry, he says, I'm going to offer this to all auctioneers, but I'm looking for 12 auctioneers specifically who I will bring into the business. And then you're going to get a high margin as the business grows. You're going to become, more or less a minor investor in the company. And as we sell more of this consignment, you're going to get extra revenue. All you need to do, there's always paperwork that you have to sign, but then I had to sell a minimum of 100 consignment trips a year. And I told the auctioneer, I said, you've got me pegged wrong. I said, I don't sell close to 100 consignment trips a year to all of my clients. This isn't something that I really push. I mean, there's a market for it when it makes sense. We put it in, but that's not really my game. And he said, well, Sherry, I can teach you how to sell more consignment in your auctions. And I was like, dude, I don't need to be told how to sell more. I know how I could sell more consignment, but that's not where I want to take the business. And I said, if I was kind of abrupt, I guess. I said, hey, if I want to go create a quota for myself, I'll go back and work at GE because, I get a better 401k if I work for a business. There's a lot of benefits to working for other companies. I don't want a quota. So I kind of turned him down on that. But the point is that this is what's happening is you've got auctioneers that are banding together. They're creating different options like that. So just be aware of it. Even if you choose not to work with Red Apple Auctions in the future, I want you to be aware of how the industry is changing with regards to that. So there's that. Number 5, excuse me. I'm seeing QR codes show up everywhere. Oh, there's Lisa. QR codes are showing up everywhere. I'll see them in the catalogs. We'll see them on the gala tables. You can click here to read somebody's story. It's in the live auction and the silent auction displays. So I pulled just a few examples here. This was from they call it the online auction. It's the silent auction, whatever the case might be. But you see the big QR code there? So people can scan that right away. Here's another one. Now, what I will like about this one better than the other one, I can tell just from looking at this silent auction display that they have, font could be bigger, but they've got a description. So you don't have to use the QR code in order to go read more about the item. You can actually scan a little bit right there. I think that's a little bit more nice. It's easier for guests. They don't have to click in to read about it. They can actually just kind of look at it there. And that's especially important if you don't have a display at all. But do you see how this one, if we go back, they didn't really have any sort of a description on that. But here they have a little bit of a description before you click through. So I prefer the description a little bit. But here's another example. This was up in Boston. This was their raffle, as I recall. So you could scan right there to buy a raffle ticket on their platform, which leads me to, you have to have a software system in order to do this. So within the schools, I listed there where from last year, all of the software that my schools were using. Now, that does not mean I'm putting my stamp of approval on all of these. I'm just telling you that this is what my clients are choosing. The most popular of those within my school client base was Greater Giving and One Cause. I think they were both tied actually with the number of people. Now, interestingly, there were still 24% of my schools that opted to use paper bid sheets, even though they had software. So don't think if you're using paper and you're getting pressure to use mobile bidding. I mean, 24% still were. And there are reasons, and I'm specifically speaking to my newer clients who may not understand why someone would go with paper or why someone would go with mobile bidding. When you do paper bid sheets, you have the ability to incorporate some marketing techniques, some psychological things that will enable you to usually generate a higher return on investment in your silent auction than you can in mobile bidding. Mobile bidding has its benefits too, but not everything that we do on paper can be converted to mobile bidding as well. So that's why, sometimes people use paper because they're out in the middle of nowhere and Wi-Fi doesn't work. But other times they're intentionally choosing paper because they can generate a higher return on their silent auction items than they can if they use mobile bidding. But again, that's something that we can dive deeper into on a consulting session if that's of interest to you or you've got some questions about that. Within the nonprofit space, you can see the software that was used as well. 6, interestingly enough, didn't use any software. They're using Square or some other way of collecting money. In fact, for the first time, one of my association clients introduced me to what's called a dip jar. I had not seen these before, and I didn't pull a photo for you here, but it's just like if you're asking for a quick $100 and everybody's going to be paying the same thing, you go up with your credit card, and it's just they call it a jar. It's like a little reader, and you just dip your card in there like that, and boom, it charges you $100. So that's even an option. The most popular of the software systems, GiveSmart, Greater Giving, and OneCause, all of them were about this, I think 6 or 7 clients were using all of those. So those were the most popular. And then again, 36% of my nonprofits and associations were opting for paper bid sheets, even if they had software. Trend number 6, I'm noticing an uptick in special appeals focusing on mental health. One of my clients called it brain health. Now, I think that this is probably tied to the pandemic era. Maybe it is an error, but the pandemic era, where we saw a lot of people talking about mental health and socializing with others and all of this. By no means are the majority of my clients raising money for mental health programs in their fund a need or their special appeal. I don't want to indicate that at all. But I did see a big jump in the number of people talking about that. Still to this day, schools are still primarily raising money for tuition assistance, scholarships / tuition / scholarships, or professional development. That's where most of it's going. Most of my associations are raising, or not associations, most of my nonprofits and associations are raising money for mission-based programming, nothing specific per se, but just, the mission kind of a thing. But more than I've ever seen in the past were people raising money for mental health programs. So in the schools, that might be like anti-bully seminars that they have, lyceums is what we used to call them when I was in school. It might be counselors coming in, nonprofits, that might be counseling sessions, especially for my social services clients, where they oftentimes will have some sort of a counseling portion to what they offer. That's where we'll see this wrapped in with regards to the mental health element. Trend number 7, new converts to the Last Hero game are impressed with how much money they can raise. So again, I will go into deep depths with you if you're not familiar with this game in our consulting sessions, but I will just briefly describe it here. Last Hero is an activity that can be incorporated into the appeal, fund a need, raise the paddle, whatever you call it. And it's a game that's played at the last level of giving. And what we will do is we will bring in a prize that the audience didn't know about. And I will say, hey, we're going to play a game at this level. The last person to donate in our Raise the Paddle, the last person to donate in our Fund a Need, whatever you call it, is going to take home this prize. You'll be surprised at how much money comes out of this. So if we look at our schools from last year, the least amount I raised in an appeal was $25,400. The most we raised in an appeal was $366,000. The Last Hero game on its own raised anywhere from $2,600 to $18,000. Now, at the event, the school that raised $18,000 on the Last Hero, we could have raised a lot more, but we were very sensitive to the amount of time that the game takes. I stopped the appeal levels at $250. I started taking the donations at $250 for Last Hero at that level, which is kind of high. Usually we're going down to $100 at a school or even $50. We stopped it at $250 is where we started the game for Last Hero. And I increased those levels back up to $1,000 is where we were. But I had a lot of people raising their hand at $250 that I didn't even take. I just said, folks, too many here, moving it up to $500 now. So we very rapidly increased those levels at that particular auction. I had another school who raised $17,000 in the Last Hero game, and that $17,000 represented 1/3 of the total raised in the appeal. They raised $53,000 or something like that in their appeal. $17,000 of it was from the game Last Hero. That's astounding, right? Nonprofits And St. Marcus, I did see where you joined. I put you as not as a school because your event is not like any other school auction. So you're always lumped into nonprofit auctions, even though you're a school. Appeals ranged anywhere from $3,450 to over $573,000. The last game on its own, Last Hero game, raised anywhere from $3,900 to almost $25,000 in the Last Hero game alone. And I will tell you that at that event, it was in Eugene, Oregon, that raised almost $25,000 in the Last Hero game. That game alone took 10 minutes to play. So why do we not use Last Hero? Because it takes a long time to play. The other reason is that I'm kind of the belief that you don't want to do it every year, or else you're going to train your audience to not give in the fund a need, because they're going to hold their cash until the game starts and then they'll play the game, and it just drags out the whole event. So anyway, that's just a quick overview of Last Hero. Again, we can go in greater depth in a consulting session for you. I'm just sharing trends right now. So those were the 7 trends I want to talk about. I'll open this up for Q&A here in a bit, but I want to finish out with my final 2 slides, talking a little bit about company updates for 2024. You may have seen, if you read my newsletter, my easing benefit auction ideas, the last one I sent out, I said, hey, I'm going to back off from doing this newsletter every 2 weeks. I have run my newsletter every 2 weeks since 2009. I have published that thing, I think, one time when I had damage to my hands and I couldn't type very well. I didn't do an issue, but otherwise I've been running that. And it's really just as a marketing tool, right? Every time I send that out, people set up meetings to talk to me about their auction, or they'll buy a product online, something like that. So it's a great way to land in people's inbox and make sure that they remember me. But the reality is it's a lot of effort, so I'm kind of scaling back now on some of the things that I'm doing for 2024. So what I want to do in 2024 is I want to launch a new website. I'm going to be changing my bulk email sender. Many of you have had problems receiving my bulk emails. You'll receive my personal emails, but not my bulk emails. I don't need to go through that with you because so many of you have had problems, especially my hospitals and my school clients, because it's very hard to break through your security. I don't know if changing my bulk email sender is going to help with that or not, but maybe. We'll see. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move the Digital Lounge to a new platform. I have not been happy with the way the Digital Lounge it looks. There's great content in there, but it's just a mess. It's like one long page with all these classes and resources in it. So although the content is great, it's not necessarily the prettiest to look at. So I want to change that. I'm sure that there'll be hangups as we transition to all these things over the course of 2024. I'll apologize in advance for, the problems that we're going to encounter. But overall, in the end, I think it's going to be great. The 2023 auction item guide, I was not going to publish it, but I think I'm actually going to have time to. So that's a little screenshot of it, what it looks like over there. The easing, I already mentioned benefit auction ideas. I'm going to scale back on that. I'm not going to be doing a publishing date as regularly in 2024. If I do anything, I'll do some YouTube videos, and then I'll probably just shoot out an email to everybody. That's the benefit auction ideas easing. This goes to everybody though, not just clients, just to let them know I published a video. Client-specific emails will continue to come with the same irregularity as they have in the past. I don't know, I might end up doing something like this on a monthly basis, just as an update. That might be helpful for all of us to kind of stay in touch. So just keep an eye on your inbox. And then finally, I'm thinking of a couple of classes that I'd like to run. One of them being anniversary galas, just talking about what people are doing to celebrate their 25th, their 30th, their 40th, their 50th, their 75th, their 125th, whatever the case might be. I've never done an anniversary gala before, but I think that might be fun for people. And then also updating the Marketing Your Auction course. I'm going to show you, I'm going to stop sharing here, but I'm going to flip over to something else and share this. A lot of people don't realize some of the great resources that I have in the Digital Lounge, even though it's a mess. And this, I think, is an example of something like this. I led the Marketing Your Auction course 1,000 years ago, but I still think that some of this is really applicable. If you go to the Digital Lounge and you find the Marketing Your Auction course, this is one of the resources that's in it. So if I were to put in, like up here, when your auction date is, like let's say it's 11/11 of 2024, well, in this Excel spreadsheet, it starts to tell you, a year out, what you should be doing. You need to secure date sensitive vendors, 26 months out, you need to secure some vendors. You need to start your email to your sponsor bucket list. You need to email your donation bucket list. You need to volunteer management. If you're running a volunteer organization and you've got people that need to have some sort of a timeline, I think that Greater Giving has a very nice timeline that they've released every year for 1,000 years as well. But this might be something that would also be good to be able to help your volunteers stay on track with what should be going out, what you should be looking at, kind of what emails should be going out, all of that, marketing or auction. So that's something, just as an example of what I've got in that digital lounge that you might not even realize is in there. A little bit of fabulousness for you there. All right, now let's go back to the final slide in the updates. Finally, on a personal note, so I had my full hip replacement on January the 11th. The surgery went great. It took longer than expected. It's supposed to take 90 minutes to 2 hours. It took 3 hours. So my brother did ask in the post-op room when the anesthesiologist came in, he said, "Hey, you might not be able to tell me, Mr. Anesthesiologist, but we were kind of planning on 90 minutes, 2 hours. It took 3 hours." And the anesthesiologist says, "Oh, yeah. He says, "I was kind of wondering the same thing." He said, "I had several surgeries that I was overseeing, and the nurse anesthetist, of course, is in each operating room, but the anesthesiologist bounces around to kind of check on all the patients." He says, "So I was like looking at my watch thinking, man, they should be wrapping up here pretty soon." He said, "So I walked in there and I said, 'Hey, what's going on in here?' And everybody was like, oh, groaning, rolling their eyes." So apparently, according to what the surgeon just told me in my 2-week checkup, is that when they get these implements to input into your hip, it's kind of like a kit that they get from the vendor. In this case, I think it was Zinser that they bought from. So they open up the kit, and it might have the bone saw in there, and a drill, and a saw, and the implement itself that goes into the femur, all that kind of thing. Well, something fell. And so they needed to get a backup for it, because otherwise they're going to have to throw it into the autoclave and sterilize it. So they turned to the Zinser rep, because the rep is always in the room when they're doing the surgeries, right? So he goes out to get the backup, but the backup was the wrong size, whatever they needed. So then he either had to go home or he had to go get another kit that they could use. And so it took a lot of time. So the surgeon said that it was a bad day for the sales rep that day, because everybody was like standing in the operating room going, "Oh, so you still dating that gal? Yeah. What about the game?" They're doing small talk while the surgery goes on. So that went well. But I will tell you, I waited so long to get this surgery that the PT is unbelievably hard. I went to my first outpatient PT the other day. She was like measuring everything. She's like, "When did you start having problems with your leg?" And I'm like, 2018 is when I first noticed that I couldn't lift my left leg. And she said, "And you just had your surgery in 2024? I said, "Yeah." So there's been, I've got a lot of issues that I got to work through here. So please, especially those of you here at the beginning of the year, make sure I have a podium or a high boy table. I will not be wearing heels, and I will not be running out into the room. Maybe by November I will be, but I'm still going to be very much like I was last year, where I'm wearing low heels and kind of like, hopefully I won't be limping, but I'm still in a very much of a recovery phase. The good news is that, the surgery went well, hardly even a scar. There's a lot of positives to it. I don't have the arthritis pain, any of that anymore. So the right hip doesn't hurt like it did. Lots of great things, but boy, have I had a lot of atrophy in my muscles. So I want to thank you for your support. I got cards and emails and flowers and gifts, and it was really, really nice. My brother came to help me for the first few days. My friend from Kansas flew out for the remaining time for that first full week. And they were just impressed. They're like, "Oh my gosh, all these people." So thank you so much. I really do appreciate all of that. And questions and answers. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to stop sharing. If there's anybody who wants to unmute, you got quick questions, I'm happy to answer anything. If it goes too deep, though, again, let's save that for consulting. But if there's anything off the top of the head you want to share or ask, feel free to do so now. Hey, Julie.
Sherry, hi, it's Julie. I just had a question for you. When you were showing the different systems or software like Greater Giving and OneCause, if we're planning on using paper bid sheets, do we need to use one of those programs?
No, you don't have to. And in fact, I do have a course, Simple Auction Checkout, that teaches you how to do a manual auction checkout.
Okay.
And I mean, it goes all the way back to even using triplicate sheets, which even you can kind of get by without that now. But that would be something to watch, and then we could go from there. I will say
Okay.
software is so darn cheap now. And what I'm
Mhm.
hearing the most, just so all of you know, Octria seems to have a very good reputation. Certainly, you're not going to go wrong with One Cause or Greater Giving, all of those.
What was the one you just said?
Octria,
Octria.
AUCTRIA. Yeah, it was one of those lists,
Okay. Thank you.
but I've heard good things about it. And it is so cheap, it's not a bad thing to invest in. And I think other people here on the call could even vouch for that. So,
Okay. Thank you so much.
uh-huh. Hey, Lisa, I saw you joined late. We'll want to catch up here a little bit. One of the things that I talked about was consignment, and I just saw that one of the consigners emailed you. So well, you missed that little segment, but we can.
Gotcha.
Anyone else? All good? All right. Was this helpful? You think we should do this again? I mean, it wouldn't be trends and so forth, but other stuff maybe. Okay. All right. I'll keep that in mind. All right. Well, very good. Well, then I'll let you go about your day. Thank you so much for participating. Again, I really appreciate the support. In fact, if I talk about it too much, I'm going to start getting a cry because it's just been so stressful. But anyway, thank you so much. And we'll see you on the consultations. Okay. Bye-bye.